Welcome to a series in which I interview some of my favourite tubers from the retro gaming world and ask them a series of questions in which I call the Tough 12. Now, my first guest is someone who's got over 1,000 subscribers, has been 8 years on YouTube, and is one of my favourite tubers that I watch. As soon as they upload a video, I go straight to them. He's the most famous Canadian person I know since Avril Lavigne and Michael Bublé won't return my texts or calls. He is the one and only PartyGameNetwork.
That I'm crazy. But you know what? They're both right. I am legally insane and I am crazy.
All of the rumors are true. Let me address that. Get it out of the way. I killed 3 people last night.
I'm legally insane. I'm legally insane.
If you enjoy this video and you're not familiar with this YouTuber, I suggest you click on the description below and make sure you subscribe to PartyGameNetwork. Now let's begin. Question 1. What is your favourite retro gaming console?
So my favorite console, by default, has to go to the Super Nintendo. And I say that because, number one, that's the console that I played the most. Definitely sunk the most hours into it. We're talking Final Fantasy II, Final Fantasy III, Secret of Evermore, Secret of Mana, Gemfire, Breath of Fire, and Contra 3. Seventh Saga, very RPG heavy. Threw in Contra 3 in there. I sunk a lot of hours into that as well. But very RPG heavy console. Super Mario RPG. So yeah, the Super Nintendo by default, and that is the first console, well, combined with the NES, that those two consoles are the ones that I started collecting for before collecting was even a thing. My collection was small back then, but those were the first consoles that I really heavily tackled.
What is the one game that reminds you most of your childhood?
So the game that would remind me of my childhood the most would actually kind of depend on what phase of my childhood. But if we break it down into 2 phases, phase 1, the very younger years, definitely Super C, which I called Super Contra back then. From day one, I've always called it Super Contra. I assume that's what it stands for, Super Contra. I had a friend that we would play 2-player on that all day, every day. He owned Contra number 1, and I owned Super C. So that's why Super C is the game that I would recognize the most with my childhood. But then if you fast forward kind of beyond those super younger years, when the Super Nintendo came out, definitely Final Fantasy III. I sunk the most hours into that. Far more hours into Final Fantasy III than I did with Final Fantasy II and Mystic Quest combined, or basically any other RPG on the whole console combined. I sunk a lot of hours into that one. And that's partly because before I even owned the game, I was renting the game. But because it's an RPG, I was re-renting it every week. It was on a weekly rental at the time, and I was re-renting it, and by the time I sunk in like 50, 60 bucks into renting it, I realized, hey, I should probably just go and buy the game. And then I went and bought the game, which means I had to start a whole new save file. But yeah, long story short, that game I just kept on playing and never stopped playing.
What is the hardest game or boss you remember playing against?
Okay, so the hardest game I remember playing by far, Pit Fighter for the Super Nintendo. In particular, the Super Nintendo version, because I've heard that the Sega Genesis version is significantly easier and is a more accurate arcade port of Pit Fighter. Pit Fighter is not a bad game, unless you're playing it on the Super Nintendo, because it's freaking impossible. I've beaten the first level, first stage is a fighting game. Never in my life have I beaten the second stage or seen somebody in real life beat the second stage. And I would challenge anyone out there. You're going to have a hell of a time just beating the first stage. But yeah, I've never seen it done. You can see it on YouTube. Sure, people on YouTube have done it, but try doing it yourself to understand how hard it is. And try doing it on the Super Nintendo version, not the Sega Genesis version.
What is the game you always wanted but never got to play?
So there's definitely a lot of games that I always wanted and never got to play. Definitely a lot. But there's one in particular, one very elusive game that I've only recently picked up, and I still haven't played it. It's taken me 30 years to get this game. And it was Legacy of Kain for the PlayStation 1. So I remember seeing this in EB Games. I remember seeing it in the magazines, video game magazines. They had ads for this game. And even the back of the game, if you read the back of the game and you read the ads, it looks absolutely mind-blowing. The way it describes it is that you're basically a vampire. So you're like the anti-hero. You're like this evil guy, or the way that my small child brain interpreted this is that you are some sort of like freaking villain. Like you're going out and slaughtering innocent people and sucking their blood. It was actually a little bit scary when I read the back. I said, holy hell. Like, you gotta go and slaughter people, and if you don't drink their blood, you're gonna die because you're a vampire. So I just remember that game was, and it's an action RPG type of game, so it was really intriguing. And the reason I never got it is because it was always competing with Final Fantasy games. You only had so much money as a kid. There's only so many Christmases. There's only so many birthdays when you can get games. And so typically I would have bought in or asked for something else. So I never did get it. Still to this day, I've never played it. But I did pick it up recently. Very recently.
Question 5. What is the worst game you remember ever playing?
So the very worst game I've played. See, the thing is, I've played a lot of bad games. But the thing is, I love bad games. I collect bad games. I play them all the time. I think bad games are fun. They're hilarious. There's so many games out there that are so bad that they're good. So it's very difficult to choose, what's the worst game you ever played. I don't know, because all the really bad ones are so bad they're good. With the exception of one. I've narrowed it down to one. There is one game among all the bad games, and it is the worst and baddest of them all. It is so bad that I have PTSD from playing this game, and I never want to play it again. Even though it has 2-player co-op, I still don't want to play it again. And I've got it right here to show you. Dirt Jockey. Dirt Jockey Heavy Equipment Operator. All the dirty work you can handle. Yeah, because there's a lot of work in here. Oh yeah, a lot of work. See, that's the problem with this game, is it feels like work. And it was very difficult. They tried to make it very hard and as realistic as possible to control the machinery. Basically, you're a heavy equipment operator and you're doing actual work. You're lifting dirt from one pile to another, and you maybe do that 1,000 times. And then you drive the vehicle from here to there, and you pick up dirt and you drive it over there and you drop the dirt down. And that's what you do. And I got PTSD from that. I don't want to do that. It felt like actual work. But with no reward. I wasn't getting paid. It was stressing me out, and the controls were hurting my brain, and I'm not getting paid. So stay away from this one.
What was your favourite or best gaming or console accessory?
Okay, so the best gaming accessory that I've ever seen in my entire life is also a gaming accessory that I've never gotten to use. And I've never seen it in real life. I used to see ads in the magazines. There's probably 1 or 2 magazines in particular I might have only ever seen one ad even. And it was a vest, an actual vest that you put on, a giant vest for the PlayStation 1. And it was a rumble vest. And so it would rumble. So let's say you're playing Gran Turismo or Contra or whatever, something that rumbles a lot. You would really be shaking. Like imagine whipping around in a racing game with this freaking rumble vest. And I wanted it so bad, but it was so expensive. I think it was like $100, plus you probably had to pay shipping. The one that I remember seeing, you had to order it through the magazine. So you'd fill out the form and maybe send them a check, and then they'd mail it to you. Because I never saw one in stores. Although I might have saw one in EB Games, I don't remember. I have a feeling I never saw it in stores, though. It's super rare. You can go on eBay now. I was checking eBay. I guess there might be a couple of different brands that sell it. But if I ignore the vest, the rumble pack in general seems to be the greatest invention, the really interesting accessory. And another thing about the rumble pack in general, kids nowadays, they take that for granted. That's in all the controllers nowadays. But back in the day, that was a really new, mind-blowing invention. It's like, wow, it brought the game to life. It really made you feel like you were in the game almost. And now it's just taken for granted nowadays. People don't even think about that. It's just expected that your controller can rumble.
What's your best retro gaming achievement?
So my biggest retro gaming achievement, I mean, I've got millions of achievements. But there's one among them that stands out the most. Because it's a very memorable day and a very memorable memory. So one day, I don't remember what year it was, might have been 2010. So I was a little bit older at this point, obviously. And I went over to my friend's house. We're going to do a full day of retro gaming. I bring all my consoles over, all my games. So we have unlimited choices. And this particular day, I had destroyed him in every game we played. He never won a single match. And of the games that I remember that we played Simpsons Wrestling. And I'm talking, I went undefeated the entire night. Imagine a friend comes over and he just absolutely destroys you. Full-on humiliation for 8 hours straight. This guy went legally insane afterwards. I'm not exaggerating. He never recovered. To this day, he's never been the same. To this frickin' day. And he banned me from his house after. I had to, once he calmed down, I was allowed to come back. But he actually kicked me out of the house at the end of the day. Kicked me out of his house. And I'll get to that, though. So, in no particular order, I destroyed him in Simpsons Wrestling for the PlayStation 1. Destroyed him in Dreamcast Ultimate Fighting Championship. And turns out Mark Coleman is basically rigged in that game. I didn't know that at the time. I beat him like 50 matches in a row with Mark Coleman. and then I told him, okay, how about you be Mark Coleman and I'll be somebody else. And then he actually beat me. Okay, so that said, so he did at least win one match that night then. Because I'm fairly certain when he chose Mark Coleman, all of a sudden I lost. And then we said, okay, Mark Coleman's rigged. Let's play another game. So we also played Ready to Rumble Boxing. And this was the second last game we played. Okay, we played it all night. And again, I just destroyed him with everyone. And I was basically Jimmy Blood 24/7 when it comes to Ready to Rumble Boxing. And then finally, when he chose Jimmy Blood, at the very end, when he's losing his freaking mind, it actually ended up being a challenge. So I think Jimmy Blood's rigged in that game too. I still won, but I had a sliver of health. It was just a slugfest, just spamming the A button. The two Jimmy Bloods just slugging each other. Just hook, like the same punch button over and over again. It was a slugfest. And I just won by a tiny hair, and he was really losing it at this point. Like, just picture this guy's just going more and more insane with every game I pop in to play. So he's really freaking losing it at this point. So finally I say, okay, let's play Base Wars for the NES. It's a baseball game with robots. Futuristic baseball game. I thought he might calm him down. But little did I know that I think the previous owner of the game has a save file. You can upgrade the teams with money. And the team that I chose was fully upgraded, maximum everything. And we found out right away because instead of you try to land on first or second base, or you try to steal a base, I might, just because I get you out doesn't mean that you're actually out. We can actually end up fighting. And if you beat me, then you're not out. Or if you beat me, then you get to steal the base. And long story short, whatever the first fight was, it was within the first 2 minutes of the game starting. It turns out my team is fully upgraded. I had a freaking light sword. It's the most expensive weapon in the game. Your guy attacks so fast that it's like 1,000 hits per second. So the NES animation is just like a guy stabbing the sword like friggin' 1,000 times per second. And as soon as I hit you with that, you can't move. You're just getting hit nonstop with the sword. So I killed his guy from full health down to 0 within like 3 seconds. And that's when he actually lost his mind and kicked me out of his house and temporarily banned me.
What is the first game you remember buying with your own actual money or pocket money? The very first one you can remember.
So I remember buying, I think the very first game I bought, I'm fairly certain, like this is the only memory that I can remember, or the earliest memory that I can remember is buying Ninja Gaiden for the NES from Microplay. It's a used video game store called Microplay. And back then you would buy games based on the cover art. So I got super lucky on that one. I didn't know that it was actually going to be a good game. You never knew what you were going to get back then. But I bought it based on the cover, that awesome looking ninja. And I was quite pleased with it. You know, it was hard as hell. I never got very far in it. But I played it a lot. You know, it was fun. That's all it was, just fun game. You know, sometimes games that are really hard, as long as they're fun, then it doesn't matter how hard it is.
And what is the first game you ever remember playing? It might be something your parents had on a particular system or particular genre of games. What is it?
So the very first game I played would have definitely been Super Mario Brothers for the NES. There's no question, because I would have gotten the NES and it probably came with that game. So definitely that would have been the first game I played. But the first game that I have significant memory of playing multiple times would have definitely been Super C, Super Contra, and also Mario Brothers number 2. I vividly remember playing that a lot. That would have been that single player game that I just sunk in so much money. You know, I remember waking up every weekend, Saturday, Sunday mornings, and that was like my go-to game for a very long time. And I would always pick Princess. I really liked the fact that you could fly with Princess. I think that was like what kept bringing me back to the game, that whole flying mechanic. I was really interested in that. And I always make her fly around. And I could never beat the game. I remember I always got stuck on one level. Or you would get bored. Like as a kid, you could only play the game for so long and then you get bored and you just turn it off. And since there's no save feature, by default you would just never be able to beat the game.
Was there one particular console that you always wanted but you never actually got? Something you really wanted, it was on your Christmas list each year, but then you never got it and it passed you by?
So there was one console that stands out the most that I always wanted and I never got to have back in the day. Two in particular, but one more than the rest. So the lesser one was the Atari Jaguar. I wanted that so bad. I would see those ads in those magazines all the time. I wanted it so bad, but it cost way too much money. And there were so many other great games and other consoles out. So it was just kind of a back of my mind thing. Like, oh, I'd love to have that. But, you know, I'm also distracted by all these other games over here anyway. And I'm content with all these other consoles anyway. So, but there was one console I really friggin' wanted so bad. It was the Sega Dreamcast.
We got her! Hi, Randy.
Well, hello.
It's thinking.
This is the day you have trained for, the day you have studied for. Utilize your superior skills, your superior intelligence.
Sit down, rodent.
Sarah, baby! Oh, you were one fly. Don't make me hurt you.
Learn to defeat your ruthless enemy, Steve of Hackensack.
Ryan, you're gonna get roofed.
Shut up, quadruped.
Sega Dreamcast. It's thinking.
And the closest I ever got to getting that console was basically there was a kid at my school who, his brother had a Sega Dreamcast and he burned all the games. That was part of the reason that the Dreamcast failed, by the way. It's because I guess it would have been the earlier model, you could burn games. People figured out how to get around the security chip, so you could just burn the games. That definitely didn't help them. And then the second console release, they fixed that. And then once everyone found out that they did that, they all wanted to buy the first gen console only, and that one sold out. But yeah, my friend had this binder of burned games, and he would bring it to school, and I would just browse the binder. That was my favorite thing to do. Just browse the binder. And I couldn't even see the real covers of the games. It was just his brother wrote with a magic marker. But I would read the titles of the game and just imagine the games. And all I was going on was a title. That's all I had. Or I could ask him, like, hey man, what's this game here? You got a game called Cannon Spike. Well, what's that? Tell me about that. And I would just have the imagination run wild on what these games, how fun these games might be. And I never did get to own it back then. I did have one of my friends who lived near the school. He did eventually get it. And we would go over to his house and play Marvel vs. Capcom 2 at lunchtime for a while.
Now here's one that's really suited well to Party Game Network, as I know you love your co-op. What is your best co-op game in memory?
So when it comes to gaming co-op memories, I've got a million. It's impossible to choose one or over another. But I will kind of generalize. The funnest co-op gaming experiences I had were definitely 007 for the N64, proximity mines in the complex 24/7. That's all we did. And once in a blue moon, we would play proximity mines in the bunker. And that was fun too. That was a fun one because if you remember the bunker, the one starting location was the funniest because there's one starting location where you're in a hallway. There's a door here to get to the main bunker area where you can get weapons. So no weapons in that hallway. And if you go backwards, you end up outside in the snow and you can kind of hide out there. But there's no weapons out there. So if somebody's laid a proximity mine at the entrance, you're screwed. You're dead. There's no body armor. You're going to die. So you can either suicide or run out to the snow, which is what you would have to do. And this is what made it hilarious. You'd have to run out to the snow, hide in the snow by having your character look at the snow so that the other guy can't screen snipe you. He knows that you're out there, but he's not going to be able to look at your screen. But you can look at their screen because you know where you're hiding. And all you got is your slapper. So you got to wait for the guy to come out. He's going to have his AK-47, whatever guns he's got, plus proximity mines, fully equipped body armor, and you're just going to have to pray and hope that you can slap him down. Other gaming memories would be playing Mario Kart 64. That was another huge, immensely popular game. Smash Bros. For the N64, a lot of N64 games. Around that N64 era was when multiplayer and four-player games had just gone completely viral, partly because the N64 made it so easy. So that was when you were having retro game parties around that era. So that would be the best gaming memories that I had. Other co-op games, though, I played Diablo 1 for the PS1. That game, you could save your characters on a memory card and bring your memory card over to anybody's house and start playing Diablo 1 together. That was like unbelievable that you could do that. No internet, but you could save your characters. You could have multiple characters, save them on a memory card and bring it over to anybody's house, and you can play Diablo 1 together with your saved characters. So yeah, lots of great co-op gaming memories. Too many to name.
Now, question 12, what is your favourite retro gaming cheat? Or favourite gaming cheat in general?
So I don't remember too many cheats. We did use a Game Genie. I don't think I knew about the Konami code back when I was super young, because I remember using the Game Genie on Super C. And I don't think I ever beat that game without the use of the Game Genie. But even with the Game Genie, like it was pretty tough. Like you'd have a couple of lives left by the time you beat the game, at best. And I'm pretty sure more than once, probably one of us would only have one life by the time we beat the game. And we beat it multiple times. We would use the Game Genie for a lot of those early NES games. I do remember that. Mario 3, there were so many Game Genie codes. But in particular, unlimited lives or not unlimited lives, it was either unlimited lives, I think it was 30 lives. You could get 30 lives with the Game Genie in Super C. So I use that one a lot.
Now, I know I said it's a tough 12 and we've done 12, but there is a bonus question I've got for you. What is your earliest or best arcade game in memory?
Earliest arcade memory, there was an arcade at the mall, one of the malls near my house. I don't remember what game I would have played or my first time going there, but there is one memory that does stick out in particular, and that was when I went to that arcade one day and they had Virtua Fighter. Sega game, Virtua Fighter. That was the very first time I saw Virtua Fighter, and I just remember that game blew me away. I ended up pissing away a lot, basically all of my quarters, all of my money. I think it used tokens back then, if I'm not mistaken. This particular arcade used tokens. Pissed away all of my tokens. They were probably charging a premium for it because it would have been a new arcade at the time. But I just remember the graphics blew me away, and I chose the Ninja. I couldn't even do any fancy moves, or I wasn't even very good. I was just doing the jump kick all the time because that was like the most ninja-like move that I could do. And yeah, I don't think I got very far, but I thought it was cool as hell. And the fact that they had that awesome looking ninja, that was pretty cool. So now I'm going to tell you about my best arcade memory. So my earliest memory and my best memory are very, very different. Those are different subjects. The best memory, I have the best arcade memory of any memory on the planet. Me and a friend of mine, I found out that my bowling alley had the Simpsons arcade game. And I was a huge Simpsons fan. Still am. Still old school Simpsons. Not the new stuff. But old school Simpsons, huge fan. And I wanted to beat that game. So I convinced my friend to come and beat the game with me. And we walked in there. I think we had $25 or $30 cash. And we went to the bowling alley. We went straight up to the counter. And we said, hey, I want quarters. $25. I think it was $25 each. We want to trade these in for quarters. And I guess he would have had the quarters because I don't remember getting the quarters any other way. Unless we went to the convenience store. But I guess he had the quarters. So he gave us, we had $25 worth of quarters. Try carrying that around. Try it. Like, we had a huge stack of quarters and we had to stack them up on the arcade machines. Stack them up. And you know, you only get like 10 seconds, I think, to put your money in. And you're going to die a lot in that game. It is hard as hell. Like, it's a friggin' beat 'em up arcade. You're meant to die because it's meant to be a quarter sucker. And there were so many levels in that game. I don't remember how much we ended up spending, but we did beat the game. It was very expensive to beat. Probably cost us $15 each, at least, maybe even 20 to beat the game. But holy hell, it's a good game. It's a long game designed to take $30 from you, from just two of us. That game got Well, if we spent 15 each, yeah, $30 each from one playthrough of the Simpsons arcade game. Great game, I would do it again. If I ever find an old school arcade that takes quarters, has Simpsons arcade game, I would easily spend $15 to $25, maybe even $30, and I would do it again.
Thank you so much to Party Game Network for agreeing to take part in this interview, and thank you to you guys and girls at home for taking some time to watch this video. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you got something out of it. The most important thing is you check out Party Game Network. All the information to him is below in the description down there, so make sure you head over to subscribe. I hope you enjoyed it. I'm Scott from Marathon Gaming. I'll see you guys soon with another video.